Good morning, boardroom and 360 Talk Radio for Women. This is Dawn Abbott with another episode of The Visionary Woman, Empowering Your Success Through EOS. So we're into the third episode now and just building on where we started. So I want to go back quickly and first of all say, if you haven't listened to episodes 1 and 2, please do that. There's valuable content in there that will help you with everything we discuss from here on out. And I will quickly run through EOS, which is the Entrepreneurial Operating System, in which I am a professional implementer. And after 30 years as an entrepreneur, implemented into my own business with huge success, to the point where my business became a self-managed company, which allowed me to step away and do what I do in walking with other entrepreneurs through the same process to get that level of efficiency and accountability and vision and a healthy, cohesive team in their companies as well. So everything with EOS starts with the EOS model, which is essentially stating that there's 6 key components to every privately held entrepreneurial organization. And when we strengthen each of those 6 key components, that's when we truly get a business with traction that runs with efficiency, has more profit, and has a lot more fun. So the 6 key components starts with vision, which is getting crystal clear on who you are, where you're going, and how you're going to get there. The next component is people, which is just defining for you who the rock stars are, those people aligned with your core values, and those people who get, want, and have the capacity to do their job well, and make sure that from the top to the bottom of your organization, every single one of those people is a right person in a right seat. The next key component is the data component, which is getting to the place where you run your business on numbers, on logic and data, and not just from intuition. So we get to a point where the entire organization has a scorecard and everyone in the organization has a measurable that they can live up to. Once you strengthen those 3 components, you have transparency and you have an organization in which you start seeing all the issues bubble to the surface because we've clarified where those issues are in those first 3 components. So the fourth is the issues component, which is just about having a place where all the headaches, hassles, and obstacles that is keeping you from your success is put, and a process for solving those once and for all. And what I mean with once and for all is solving them at the root cause of the issue so they don't continue to come back. Then the 5th component is the process component. And the process component is just getting that 80-20 rule, where 20% of all of the processes in your organization and all of the steps in each of those processes is documented. And more importantly, it's followed by all, where everyone is following those processes that you know work, that get you to the place where you're going. And that brings us to the 6th key component, the 6th key component, which is traction. And the traction component is about that place of accountability. So it's setting up a regular cadence of meetings weekly with a specific agenda that's followed, and coming together or as an organization once quarterly to reconnect and reset priorities for the quarter. Those priorities we call rocks. So those are the 6 key components that are everything we do, and all of the tools that we bring into the organization through EOS are in the effort to strengthen each of those 6 key components. So the last episode, that kind of catches you up. The last episode, we discussed the first part of the Vision Traction Organizer. That is a foundational tool and one of the first things we dive into. And that is in 2 parts. The first part, the vision section. And so now we're going to dive into the second part of the Vision Traction Organizer. So we answered the first 5 questions through some exercises of the vision portion. And now we're down into the nitty-gritty. This is where shoes hit the streets. This is where we're talking about, we're just taking that vision and breaking it down into smaller sections in the here and now, in the near future. So we start with the 1-year plan. And with the 1-year plan, we've just crystallized the 3-year picture on the vision portion. So we just got crystal clear in our mind's eye of what it's going to look like in 3 years. So now we break that down and say, okay, if we're going to get there and it's going to look like that, what are all the key measurables, numbers, and goals that we need to accomplish in this year, which is a third of the way to that 3-year picture, right? So what I want to really make clear here is everything with EOS is about simplicity. And so what we're wanting to do is do less better. And I will help you sort of imagine yourself at the beginning of any normal year where you decide, okay, what do I want to accomplish? So you did it at the beginning of 2023. You sat down and said, what do I want to do this year? And I bet you filled a page or so with things that you wanted to accomplish. Well, what I will share with you is that we usually overestimate what we can accomplish in a year. And so what I'm going to ask you to do is really get laser focused. What are the 3 to 7 goals only? More than that, it becomes this situation where when everything's important, nothing's important, because we have so many objectives that we want to get to, that really what is most important. And we find ourselves after making that huge page-long list of things we want to accomplish this year, we get to the end of the year sort of defeated with, well, I got half of this done and I did do this. And I got a couple of pieces of each of these 5 things, right? And we struggle with, all right, we'll do better next year. What I want you to do is remember that we've got this job of running the company, and everyone within the company has all of these tasks and all of this day-to-day work that has to be done. So when we're talking about goals, we're talking about sort of those big company objectives that are going to get us to our 3-year picture. And so we don't want to set 20 of those and expect that people who are doing their job well are going to help us get all of those done. And what we want to make sure is that we help our teams understand what is most important to us. So they can sort of put away, okay, I don't have to work on all 3 of these other things right now. What they've shared with me is how we're going to get to this picture they've shown me is by me doing X, Y, Z to get us to these 5, like I said, 3 to 7 goals for the year. So less is better. That's where I'm getting at. All right. So when we set our 1-year plan, we start with the date, the future date. And so I would suggest that if you're in 2023 and you're going to start this now, if you go past the middle of the year, maybe you set a 1.5-year goal. And so we do it till the end of 2024, if you want to stick to a calendar year. If you're in the first half of the year, the first 6 months, I would say just make it a shorter 1-year plan, right? Make it a 9-month or a 10-month 1-year plan for this first year. So that's sort of the rule of thumb with the future date. So let's say we are in July of 2023, and we've decided that this future goal is going to be December of 2024. So we've got a little over, well, we've got about a year and a half, right? And then we're going to set our revenue goal. So you can either do that as a cumulative from now until that date, or you can do what's the annual goal. What does 2024, what's the revenue you want to produce in those 12 months, whatever works for you. And just come up with, what do you think your gross revenue number is? And my hope is that you dig into your accounting a little bit and you really look at your entire previous 3 years, and you start, you get the sales leader on board who knows how much revenue they think they can accomplish with their team, things like that, that you don't just pull a number out of the hat, that you get really close, because you don't want it to be so high that you can never hit it and it's demotivating. You also don't want to hit it so low that it's not sort of a stretch, that it's not sort of gets everyone geared up to have to work a little harder to get to that number. So that's your revenue number. And then profit, you can either do that as a dollar amount, or you can do that as a percentage. And so in my world, I'm always striving for at least 10% profit. To me, that feels, and some companies are higher, but 10% to me feels like sort of a minimum profit margin for an entrepreneurial organization. And so again, dive into your accounting, and if it's 7 this year, that's fine. Just know that you're sort of shooting to get that profit up in the next few years. So the next is the measurable. And so with the measurable, this is going to be consistent. So we're going to use this measurable across multiple places. So when you're thinking about measurable, we talked about it in your 3-year picture. The measurable is the thing that sort of defines for everyone in the organization the size and scope of the company. So if you make widgets and you're making 1,000 widgets this year, in 2024, you want it to be 1,500 widgets. If it's number of clients served, if it's number of barrels sold, or number of shirts sold, or if it's number of events or number of gigs, or those types of things. So what is it that you do, and how can you describe to the entire team in a very simple way that we're going to grow by 50%, or we're going to grow by 20 or 100, whatever that looks like. And everybody can say, oh, I get where we're going, right? Fairly easily. So then you get down to defining those 3 to 7 goals. And what I would suggest is that you have everyone in your leadership team really just do kind of a brain dump of everything they think that should be accomplished in this time frame, in this year. And then we go through this exercise of keep, kill, or combine. So the first pass through, we sort of, everyone shares all of their ideas, and we sort of go through the list and say, yeah, that's important. It's not important this year. There's no way we're going to get to it. So let's kill that. But anytime anyone on the team wants to keep it in this first pass, let's keep it for now. And then are there things that really are the same thing, but they're maybe said just slightly different? Have a little discussion around, is this the same? Make sure that it's truly the same objective goal. And if it is, let's combine those and rewrite it. So that's first pass. Second pass, you're going to go through again And you're going to do that same keep kill exercise, but you're just going to start getting really honest about what is more important. And I've seen companies do where they're down to 9, and it's, if you had to get rid of 2 of these, what would it be? Or really, just start looking, is it this or this is more important of these 2 things? And really just, be critical. Look at that with this critical eye of, does this have to be done this year? Because if we focus on too many things, then nothing is going to be important. So what are the 7, no more than 7 goals for this year? And then the next question we're answering on the VTO, on the traction page of the VTO, is rocks. So this is really important because we want to create this 90-day world. What we know to be true is human nature. People just start to fray after 90 days, right? And what ends up happening is we either get really excited about this objective for the next 90 days and we go out and do part of it, and then real life takes over and we forget all about it. Or we leave a meeting excited about this objective, but we get bombarded with work and, oh my gosh, we are 85 days into the quarter and we haven't even started that project. And so we're going to set up small spikes of accountability. Once we set these goals, we're going to create a plan. And I'll get into that in a minute. So we're going to create a plan to know how we keep accountable on each of these objectives. But let me go back and share with you why they're called rocks. It's just from if you've heard of the sort of the idea of the cylinder of water, sand, pebbles, and rocks. And if you try to fit each of those things into a cylinder or a container, the order in which you put them in is very important, right? So let's say the water is all of the non-essential, all of that things that sucks away at our attention, whether it be social media or people walking into our office to talk about the weekend or all those other things. And if we allow that to take our attention and we put the water in the container first, and then the sand is those necessary interruptions, but they're not the priority. So our email or those quick meetings that get thrown on our calendar and all of those kinds of things. So we put that sand in next because that's what grabs our attention next. And then the pebbles or the daily to-do list, those things that you wrote on your list of paper either last night or this morning when you came in the office as these are the things I want to accomplish today. And we put those in. My guess is so often we barely even get to those pebbles, right? We've allowed the water and sand to distract us and interrupt us and take our attention. And we get to the end of the day and we're like, shoot, I was going to get these 5 things done and I got 1. How did that happen? And then there's these rocks. These rocks are the big objectives that the entire company, that the leadership team of the company has decided is most important to the success of the organization. And I own one of these rocks. How am I ever going to get to it? So the idea here is we set a rock and we make sure that it's incredibly important. And so we create a plan or a schedule, do some time blocking. There's lots of ways that you can get into if it's the kind of rock that has to be worked on a regular basis. I have those rocks and I will put that on before I open my computer, before I look at my phone and my email. I'm going to spend 30 minutes each day on the rock. That's how I just wrote a book. The rock was my book. And so every day before I looked at my phone or turned on my computer, I wrote for 30 minutes. And so that's, or is it a weekly? You know, you're going to spend one day a week or a half day every week, or maybe it's just something that you have to do 4 different projects and you're going to put them on your calendar and set aside 2 hours 4 different times across the quarter. However that looks for you, you create a plan to make sure that you get that done. And then when we talk about the L10 meeting, there's a place in that L10 meeting where you're going to share if your rocks are on or off track. And that's how you know if they're on or off track. What we never do is say, oh, it's not due for 65 days, so it's on track. Haven't even looked at it, but it's fine because I have 65 days or whatever it is. We create a plan in advance, and if we're sticking to the plan and it's on our calendar and we're doing it when it comes up on our calendar, then we're on track. And we'll talk more about that when we talk about the L10 meeting in another episode. Okay, so let's go back to setting rocks. So future date, 90 days from now, 90 to 91, depending. And you don't have to fall on calendar quarters exactly. It's not critically important. It's just creating this 90-day world, this 90-day cadence, right? So set the date 90 days from now. And again, you do your revenue, profit, and measurables. So revenue, again, cumulative for the year. If we're in third quarter, what is it for the first 9 months of the year? Or you're just doing quarterly revenue. And that's dependent on you. You decide. In my business, we're very seasonal. So we just set quarterly because each quarter is very different. You know, we'll have second and third quarter, which are very high quarters and so forth. So we just set a 90-day revenue goal, and the profit for that same time period, same 90 days, and your measurable. Again, that size and scope. Keep it consistent across the board. It's the same measurable that you use for your 3-year picture and your 1-year plan, and now your 90 days. And then we do the same thing like we do for the yearly goals. We look at that year and we think, okay, I'm breaking this down into 4 quarters. What needs to be accomplished in the next 90 days to get these goals accomplished for the year? So are you doing one whole goal? Or are you breaking up 4 or 5 of those goals into different parts? Whatever works for you. And then is there anything else? So once again, you have the team do that brain dump. What do they think needs to be accomplished for the next 90 days? You go through that same keep, kill, combine exercise, 2 passes through until you get it down to 3 to 7 rocks for the quarter. And then those things that are left over, we don't just get rid of those. Those things that didn't make the cut, we put those on the next section on the Vision Traction Organizer, which is the issues list. So we have a long-term issues list, and that's where those, we're not going to do them this quarter or this year, but we're going to park them on the long-term issues list so that every quarter we can look at that long-term issues list and decide, is this the quarter we're going to tackle this or not? Okay. The other thing that can happen with some of these leftover rocks that didn't make the company rock list, they can become individual rocks. So let me stress the importance of the difference. First of all, you have 3 to 7 company rocks. These are the most important things and the priority for the entire company to be successful. Each person on the leadership team then can have their own, they can have 3 to 7. So let's go back. First, we have the company rocks. There's 3 to 7 of them. And we are going to define who owns that rock. So who's the driver of it? They don't have to do it all themselves. Maybe they have a department, or maybe they're going to, recruit a couple of people within the organization, but they're going to drive accountability, and they're going to make sure it's getting done because it affects them most, right? If it's some type of sales goal, the sales leader owns it. If it's a marketing goal, so we're going to define who owns each of these company rocks. So now we have, let's say we have 5 rocks for the quarter on a company basis, and there's 7 leaders. And one leader has 2 rocks, and another 3 leaders each have 1. Well, now every leader on the team could potentially have their own 3 to 7 rocks for the quarter, if it works. Now, if people are in the crazy busy season, like I just explained with my company, second and third quarters are crazy busy. There's people in the operations department that do not take any rocks in those quarters. We just know their job is doing their job, and they don't have the capacity for anything else. So you decide that if every leader can have some rocks, they can now be approved by the leadership team to take individual rocks. And so some of those that didn't make the cut for the company, they're still important to that person or that person's department. And so the entire leadership team can say, yep, put that on your individual rocks. And what makes them different is only the priority of importance. That's the only difference between company and individual rocks. The company rocks are to be done first. And if you have time for individual rocks, great. So that's the way we do that. And then lastly, on the Vision Traction Organizer, I just shared with you is that issues list. So this is where we keep the long-term issues. These are sort of those big things that didn't make the cut for yearly and 90-day rocks or yearly goals. Or the things that you keep on this parking lot because they're not needed to be solved in the present. Okay, so that is your entire Vision Traction Organizer. And that's the vision section of the EOS system, right? And so it's 8 questions: core values, core focus, 10-year target, marketing strategy, 3-year picture, 1-year plan, 90-day rocks, and your issues list. And so the next part of the Vision Traction Organizer is really important. It is shared by all. So a couple of ideas here. The main discipline is this vision means nothing unless the entire company understands it, right? And the entire company is aligned and can behave in the way that the core values suggest that they behave, and that they're on your bus wanting to get to that same place you're going. They're excited about your core focus, and they love your 10-year target, and they can see that 3-year picture. Well, if you're not sharing it, they can't be any of those things, right? And then you're just back on Owner Island with all these ideas floating in your head and no one helping you get there, right? And that's a frustrating place to be. So shared by all is the second major discipline in the vision component. And so we want to make sure, first of all, that we're very crystal clear on all of these things, that we don't just go share this stuff willy-nilly. Because if I'm guessing, and you're a true visionary, you've probably read a book and said, this is what we're doing, and introduced it to the company and said, this is our new way of doing things. Or you've sat down and had a 1-day session and you've come up with your core values and your mission statement, and you go share it with everyone, and then it just kind of pitters out. Okay, so let's not do that. Let's not fill out everything on this Vision Traction Organizer one day, and the next day we're having a meeting and I'm going to share it all. Let's sit with it for a while. Let's, maybe even a quarter at least, and look at it for the next 1 to 2 quarters and revise, Do we need, is this really hitting it? Is this really what we want? Sometimes we have to move slow to go fast, right? We have to take a step back to really go forward. So that's one thing that I've seen be sort of a pitfall, is they're just too eager to share it. And then when things change, you have this team that's kind of doesn't believe you, right? They kind of don't trust that this is sticking. And then the other thing about shared by all is that people have to hear something 7 times before they hear it one time. So when it starts to become redundant and you feel like you're saying it over and over, you just started. You are on your way for it truly being shared by all. And so we do shared by all in a couple ways. One is we have a state of company meeting after our leadership team quarterlies. And again, after the first or second couple quarters of getting together as a leadership team and revising and reviewing this VTO, then you have your first state of the company meeting. And you're going to share that first page, that vision page, the core values. You're going to have an amazing core value speech in which you define them and you talk about the history of them and you share some analogies and you share what they're not, but what they are. Maybe give some examples of some of the team members that you've seen who are amazingly, truly aligned with the value. So you can give some examples of what it looks like. And so you create that speech to do the core value speech. You share your core focus, your 10-year target, your marketing strategy, and you share the 3-year picture. And this is sort of the idea is you're sharing who you are, where you're going, and how you're going to get there. And then you share the 1-year plan and the rocks for this quarter. And so you're saying, this is where we're going right now, right? And you can also start that state of the company meeting with where we've been. So you definitely want to make sure you get a section of celebration. So this is what we got accomplished last quarter. This is what we got accomplished last year. This is what got us to this place. And now here's where we're going. So where we've been, who we are, how we're getting there, and what's next. Sort of those are the sections of the state of the company meeting. The other way you make sure this is shared by all is that it becomes part of your vernacular all the time, that every quarterly review with any staff or monthly review, whenever you do performance reviews, that you're reviewing someone based on, in part, based on those core values. So you can give them that rating. And we're going to share more of that in the people component. So I'm just giving you a heads up, but we want to use it in hiring. We want to make sure that we're sharing all of this information and we're asking core value alignment questions in our interviews, that we are rewarding and recognizing people based on being aligned with the core values, that they did something amazing that helps us with our core focus, that they're in charge of some big initiative to get us to our 3-year picture, that you're really rewarding and recognizing people that are aligned with all of those things. At our company, we did core value shout outs. And so every time people shouted each other out for a core value, they were put in a drawing. And then they got a gift card or some company swag or whatever. We also did VIP of the month, and they got a special parking space at the company, the front space. And it was because someone shouted them out. I started it. I shouted out the first person that I thought was most aligned with our core values and why. And they got a gift card and they got to be the VIP for the month. And part of their duties during that month is to find the next person. And then they chose the next VIP for the month, the person that was aligned with core values. And again, why the examples, they then got the gift card for that month and the special parking space. And I think we did some other, company lunch one day in their honor. things like that. So those are just some ideas to start getting this shared by all. It needs to be part of the company culture. It needs to create the company culture. That's what culture is alignment with values and everyone on the same page about where you're going and what your focus, what your core focus, what your mission is. So that finishes us off on the Vision Traction Organizer and the vision component of the EOS model. So next week, we will be diving into the people component and the tools that are in the people component, the people analyzer, and the right people and right seats, defining that for you and what that looks like and the tools you use to get there. So I look forward to meeting you again next week. I hope you're finding value. If you need any questions answered or you need anything from me, my website, abbottcoach.com, ABBOTT coach.com, or Dawn at abbottcoach.com. Thanks for listening.